Good evening. Welcome to the special meeting of the Ojai City Council, Ojai Redevelopment Agency, successor agency, special meeting of May 27th. Roll call.
Councilmember Blatz.
Here.
Councilmember Clapp. Here. Councilmember Lara.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith. Here. Mayor Strobel.
Present. Okay, and this special meeting is to review or go over all of our items for our budget. Mr. Clark?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. I'd like to start by showing a PowerPoint that gives an overview of the budget. So I think Rhonda's going to fire that up for us. I stalled for you. Yeah, they're trying to get the, that's the one downside of these. Well, let me suggest that since we're having a little trouble getting the budget overview up, that we just start going through the individual budgets. The purpose of reviewing the individual budgets is to raise any questions that you have, to hear input from the public, and to gather information. But we're not expecting you to make decisions because you really have to go through the whole budget and see the totality of it before you decide what you're going to add and what you're going to subtract from the proposed budget. So the first item that we have is the Arts Commission request. And the Arts Commission request is in your packet. And I believe that Christine Golden is here to present that, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, please do.
Christine Golden. I'm the chair of the Arts Commission. And thank you for giving us this opportunity to present our budget request to you tonight. We appreciate that. We have followed the advice of former Mayor Blatz, who said last year that we should ask for more. And I wanted to remind him and the rest of you of that. So, as you can see, we did. Just a little background. I'd like to really start out by talking a little bit about the grants program. Roger Conrad had planned to be here, but at the last minute he called and he couldn't make it. But I want to talk about that because I think it's one of the premier programs that the Arts Commission deals with on behalf of the city of Ojai. And last year we had $27,000 requested of us by 13 grant applicants. but we were only able to award $11,000 because that was the budgeted amount. And so that's less than half. It's almost a third of what was requested of us. And we find that year to year to year. We just have to say, and some of you have been there at the meetings when we're doing that, and we have a chalkboard here, and we're going through and saying, well, if we give this here and take away from there, because we don't want to send anyone away who's got a worthy application. And just as a reminder, some of the things that we're helping to fund, because there are matching funds that are required for all these requests. The community chorus. What would Ojai be without the community chorus? The storytelling festival. We've also given funding to some of the other very large festivals that have happened here in Ojai, the music festival. We give funding to educational programs, which I think is, for me personally, one of my favorite things to see come across the table as a grant that is going to address some of the needs of our youth, because the arts have been just cut back so heavily in our school system. We also give money to programs for the elderly. We are supporting a program right now that encourages seniors to be much more active. Seniors from the Gable and seniors from even, we had enough to give this year that they could include others that aren't perhaps at the Gables in some of their programs. And on and on and on. And I'm going to call Michael Addison, the co-chair, in a minute, so he can talk to you a little bit about why we're requesting money for our Student Artist Mentor Program. We're in our second year of that, and he's going to tell you about the success stories that we've had with that. In addition to that, we have a public arts program that we need to keep our eye on all the time, and we need monies for that for things like signage. That public art belongs to the citizenry through you. And we should have uniform signage saying that this is a piece that is owned by the city. And so we're working on that. We have a new committee that we began a year and a half ago, and that committee is about educating all the citizenry of Ojai and beyond as to what art is and what it's about. And that program is asking for additional funding so that we can continue in our efforts in that way. One of the programs that you may be familiar with that we've already mounted is the films, the Art 21 films that are shown at the Ojai Theater, which Khaled gives us at no cost. And we are calling the Second Saturdays, and they'll begin again in the fall. And on Second Saturdays, people can come and look at films and see what is current in art, which we think is critical. Because as we expand our public arts program, we would like to bring some more current kind of art into the city, some, quite frankly, controversial art into the city, because that art is about that. It is about controversy. It is about getting people talking. And then let's talk about how this benefits the city, because that just flows right into getting people to talk. We want people to come from all over and to think of Ojai as a mecca for art. And so your Arts Commission is working toward that end. And when that happens, as it did this weekend when the town filled up from Art in the Park, the bed taxes go up because people are staying overnight. They are eating at the restaurants. They are going into the shops and buying, and that is good for the economy of Ojai. There is a tremendous amount of research that shows that a really vibrant, current arts program in a city is good for commerce. It's good for the health of the city. So the last place you should take your scalpel is to the arts program, because that's your bread and butter, ladies and gentlemen. That is really what counts. I'm here. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about any of the individual line items. I'm going to let Michael talk just for a minute or longer. Or longer about the Artist Student Mentor Program. This is so exciting. Michael.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk to you. The Artist Student Mentor Program was initiated last year as an experiment, and it links prominent artists here in Ojai with students from our schools. And it was enormously successful. We had twice as many artists apply for the program and twice as many students apply for the program as we could fund. Because of the increase in our present budget, we're now offering 4 such artist-student mentor relationships for the summer, where artists and students will work together and the student will learn. And I think that for me, to add to what Christine just said in terms of the impact on the community that's provided by the Art Commission, this is a really significant impact because we're impacting the children of the community. We're giving those who are already displaying a talent and a passion an opportunity to leap into an adult consciousness and to share that experience. And that in turn feeds back into the schools. That in turn feeds back into community, strengthens families, and creates a climate where people saying, let's see, where should I move to? Oh, Ojai. Active engagement between art and education. That shows a forward-thinking community because the research is there that shows absolutely positively that students who excel in the arts, who experience the arts, see an impact in their reading ability, in their mathematical reasoning ability, in their conceptual skills, and in their ability to think critically. And this is what we want, is it not? And so the Artist-Student Mentor Program, combined with all the other programs that the Art Commission offers, has that sort of impact on the community as it is now, and as it continues to grow and flourish. Who's going to come into the community? It's going to be people like you who recognize the value of art in a community. I hope you will support what we're doing. Thank you.
Madam Mayor? Are you ready for questions, or did you have more you wanted to say?
I'll wait here for questions if there are any. Is that okay?
Yeah, I do. I have some questions. What kind of participation did you have at the Art 21 films? How many people came?
Oh, I wish Barbara Hirsch were here because she could give you the exact numbers. We ran 4 Saturday programs this last fall, and they were not as well attended as we had hoped. I would say there was anything from 15 to 30 people, depending on which Saturday it was.
And why do you think there wasn't that great of attendance?
Well, I think one reason was because we were doing it on consecutive Saturdays, and for people to, earmark that they want to come every single Saturday within the period of a month, it was hard for me. And that's why we've decided to come up with this idea of second Saturday. So there's one a month. That's one reason. Another reason is we have to get the word out. And once again, we don't have funds really to do that very effectively. We have our website. If somebody happens to go on the website and would know to click on something like that, they would find out that way. So we also found out that we can get materials from PBS, who is the owner of the Art 21 program, that we can use in front of the theater. There was no signage of any kind to let people know this was going on. But this year, when we start this up again in the fall, we're going to have the big placard and hopefully even something up on the marquee. There's some issues with that, but we're working on that. That should increase
I'm
it.
embarrassed to ask this question because I'm on the computer so often, but I seem to neglect to look at our own sites. Is there a link on the Visitors Bureau website to the Arts Commission?
I'm not sure. I don't know the answer to that.
Because that would be a really nice way to be able to promote what you're doing, is if there is a link? Okay, great.
There is? Okay.
Okay, I have another couple of questions and then I'll be done.
Sure.
Do you know how much the budget for arts has been cut in the public schools?
Oh, I couldn't give you any figures, and really the information that I have is by word of mouth, so I wouldn't put any weight on it other than knowing that when a particular art teacher at Matilda retired, that position was not refilled. And there is a teacher over there, thank goodness, who is doing an incredible job. But it's how many students can one teacher take for a period a day to do art, where it used to be part of a rotation that the students would have. When I was principal there, all the students would rotate through. At some point, they would receive at least the begin. And this is when you want to get them, when they're in junior high. That's the time to start the art taste. And it's money. It was a money thing. Hopefully, I know the district is a little healthier from what I've been reading. So hopefully some of that will come back. And I know they're looking at middle school configuration for the public school, and if they do that, for sure, those kinds of programs should come back. I also know that Gail Childress, Valerie Freeman, and others through OSA have tried to get into the schools and do some after-school things, but there are issues with that as well. We have a free hand, and we can do this on behalf of the city and give. Jimmy Cleary is one of the artists this time around. Can you imagine spending summer hours as working with a Jimmy Cleary? Another group is Linda Taylor and Elise Bogovsky-Harris. They're working as a team to give that experience in that lab. I mean, I don't think the schools could match that kind of thing
Right.
that we're doing.
And
People will want to settle here because of programs like that. They will move here with kids, and that's good for the schools.
I'm going to go to the other end of the spectrum because we are also a community that has a lot of the elderly. And do you know of any connection between arts and dementia?
Arts and
Dementia.
dementia.
Whether
Only,
there's a
only what I've read, which is scant research on that, and that the more active in singing, in movement that one is as one ages, although I can't really say since I did this when I was dancing, so I'm not so sure. Maybe I'm wrong. But all of that is good. Anything that keeps the body healthy and young and keeps the mind supple is obviously going to help.
So
I
you
don't know
started
about
a program
advanced
with,
dementia, though. I couldn't say that.
so you've started a program dealing with some participation for the elderly at this
We
point.
awarded a grant to a group that goes into the Gables and now brings folks from other, like, what's the name of the one with
St. Joseph's?
the Manor, and others. They now have the funding to bring other elderly people in, and they do a singing group every Wednesday from 11 to whatever, and they fill the room, and the seniors are singing, and they're active, and they're moving and swaying, and they give a performance. They have a performance open to the public. It's very well attended. It's a wonderful program. Rockin' It Old Style, I think it's called.
Okay, thank you.
Wonderful program.
Yes, thank you.
Hi, Carol.
Hi. $5,000. Who gets that money? Are you paying the artists to take on these students? I mean, you say they need a scholarship. Why do they need a scholarship?
Michael, do you want to come up and help with this one? We'll explain exactly where the money goes. I'm going to let Michael do that because he's the chair.
That particular program was designed from the outset to be perceived by the students and the artists as professional and not a volunteer contribution on the part of the artists, but rather something that they will do with professional integrity because they are receiving a fee for it.
Okay, so they're
So
getting...
they each receive $750. The students then receive a scholarship on the completion of the work, and that scholarship is jointly funded by the Art Commission, and I'm very happy to say, the Education Foundation. So in that way, we're linking with the Education Foundation and both supporting this program. And I should add, because I'm president of the Education Foundation, that we're moving in the direction now in this coming funding cycle of beginning to provide more support from the Education Foundation for the arts in the schools, for precisely the reasons that Christine just spoke. So I think there is an energy at work here, a synergy, if you will, that is very positive.
Oh, I appreciate that, but...
Can I add something to that, Carol, for you?
Yes.
I know last year that Doug Lochner, who was the sculptor who worked with the student, that much of that stipend went for materials. So the artists that are working with students have a cost, and that's a materials cost. They're also taking time away from their own business, their own...
Okay, I got it. It's the artists who get paid. You know, I sing in the community chorus, and I appreciate that the arts grants gives us
Yes.
$1,000 every 2 years. We have about 70 members who are all volunteers. We put on a fantastic show, and we get $1,000 every 2 years, and these are permanent residents in the city. I appreciate what you're doing for our kids. That's fantastic. But these 16-year-olds, most of them will go off to college. Your budget request is double what it
Yes.
was last year. So, you know, something's going to have to go. I'd like to hear from you, too, whether it's going to be the $4,000 for the Ojai Education Committee, for the Saturday showcases, which were very poorly attended, or $5,000 for this program. You just can't have it all, in my opinion.
Any other questions, comments from council?
Madam Mayor, if I do, first of all, I appreciate your guys' hard work. It's been pretty entertaining going to your meetings and watching it on TV, and it just, you could tell the passion is there for the work. And I, for one, am very excited about the Art Student Mentor Program. I think it's fantastic. Having young girls and seeing them being involved in Oh Yes and seeing how their self-esteem has gotten better, their speaking ability has improved dramatically. It just many facets I contribute to using the creative side of your mind. So I had a question about the arts grants. So how much more are you asking from last year on that particular program?
Roger Conrad, who's the chair of that, thought that we'd like to bump that amount from $11,000, that was last year's allocation that we gave out of the pool of money that you awarded us, to $16,000 this year.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Madam Mayor, I think one of the most important things that our community has, particularly Ojai has, is our arts. And I didn't say that I thought they should ask for more last year in a flippant manner. I said it because I truly believed it. I see on a federal level how the government feels like the first place they want to cut spending is by taking things away from public arts, which I think is wrong. I think that we are nearsighted and myopic by not supporting the arts. I believe it has far more value to our community than what is apparent by each of these programs. I think it has a synergistic effect on other programs, and Ojai is known to be an arts community, and I think that we should support it. And I think $32,000 in this community is fine to support it. If anything, maybe we should spend more.
And I'll just comment that I also agree that it's very important. It's not something that the city can commit to funding, in perpetuity. I mean, they're limited funds, and we have a lot of work we have to do here. But maybe our funding presently will inspire other agencies to join in. So if it does generate interest and participation in other groups as far as funding, that would be wonderful. But the idea of the city of Ojai, taking on too much of a burden is not reasonable. But thank you. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Clark?
Thank you. I think we've got our technological difficulties handled, and we're ready to go through the overview. Except this thing doesn't work. Do I need to point it somewhere in particular?
No, you shouldn't have to point it anywhere.
Is there an on button? Let me try this.
Okay, give him some help, someone.
Oh. So I have no idea what I did. So this is just an overview of the budget schedule. It starts with the council articulating its goals, and then the development of a proposed budget that is intended to achieve those goals to the degree possible. These budget workshops on tonight's meeting and the next meeting really focus more on the expenditure side than the revenue side. The revenue side, we've spent some time on in the past, and basically we shoot for reasonably conservative revenue estimates so that we're more likely to go over than under during the course of the year. We also have a public hearing scheduled on June 10th and adoption on June 24th. If we need to have additional time to review budget matters, we have a special meeting blocked out on June 17th, but only if needed. So there's the city council driving the budget goals. So the philosophy that we've been following in order to achieve your goals is outlined here, and that is, first of all, to keep permanent staffing lean. We've had more full-time staff in the past, and during the closure of the inn and also during the recession, we reduced it to what's pretty much a bare-bones staff. And we're trying to continue to operate with a lean staff because those are precious funds. So the second part is using consultants and contractors strategically, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. The third point is to dedicate TOT growth to capital improvements. During the recession, the amount of TOT that we had dropped way down, and over the past 3 or 4 years, as we've gone along, it's come back. And as it's come back, we've put that money into the capital improvement fund, and that's what has allowed us to do the street paving that we're doing now, and many of the other construction programs that have resulted from many years of deferred maintenance. And then the final point is to prepare for future challenges. So we do kind of look ahead into the future to see what might be coming up. With the staffing and the funding that you provided last year, there's a number of major initiatives that we completed. The housing element obviously took a lot of time and effort. The ombudsman program relating to second units took a lot of time and effort. The council approved a styrofoam ban that goes into effect on July 1st. You approved a dark sky ordinance, which went into effect last August and which we're still discussing the implementation of tonight. You just approved a water-wise ordinance and a height ordinance last week. All of those were pretty major dedications of staff, and part of the reason we've been able to do those is because we've beefed up our community development department from what it was during the recession. You've outlined a number of major initiatives coming up, a visioning process, which we're going to discuss tonight, development of a telecommunications facilities ordinance, which we discussed last week, the first phase of neighborhood planning, which the Planning Commission will be discussing in June, updating the second unit guidelines, and also the transient rental rules, which we'll be discussing in June. Whoops, now it's going crazy. Let's see if I can get back to, okay. So there's some other special projects that we'll be dedicating staff resources to, primarily in public works and recreation, and that's street sweeping enforcement, leaf blower restrictions. We have an outreach meeting on that later this week. Skateboard park lighting. We've spent a lot of time working with the skateboard group on that project, and hopefully that'll come to fruition this year. And we've also been working with another community group on a BMX course, which is sort of in its skeletal outline form right now, but we're trying to help them put some meat on that outline. So this shows the history of the hotel tax over the last 10 years. And you can see that the blue portion is the portion that goes into the general fund and just funds our general operations and our staffing and so forth. And the green portion is the portion that we're putting into capital improvements. If you look at the bars going back to prior to the recession in 06 and 07, the blue portions are actually a little bit higher than the blue portions right now. So by keeping a lean budget, we've been able to dedicate money to capital improvements. The major benefit of this initially has been our repavement or our pavement rehabilitation program. And this is a list of all the streets that we've either done recently, are doing right now pretty much as we speak, or have programmed for the coming fiscal year, which we'll probably do in the fall. And that represents a major investment of money in street overlays. I'm going too fast now. However, we've been able to dedicate money to other projects as well, and a lot of this money has been leveraged by private contributions or grants. So during the current fiscal year, we finished the Boyd Center rehabilitation, which we just dedicated a couple weeks ago. We made extensive repairs to the museum, and the Libby Fountain was redone, which you should see at night. It looks beautiful at night. In the 14-15 budget, we have money programmed for the Sarzati picnic canopies, for an outdoor basketball court, For bicycle improvements, when we say that, that's primarily crosswalks and bike trails. The museum roof, which has not yet been addressed, and redoing the playground equipment at Libby Bowl. So this shows us spending $1.5 million per year upgrading the facilities in the community. The road overlays we just described, some of the park facilities we described. The Complete Streets programs include the bike trails, the crosswalk improvements, many of which are grant funded. We've dedicated some of the money for parking lot overlays, so I think we've done 6 parking lots to date. And then just general facilities and transit. So all that together is a substantial step forward. As far as staffing goes, we've actually reduced the number of full-time positions that we have, and that's generated some savings. So we eliminated the recreation director, the building official / code enforcement officer, the highest level accountant that we have under the finance director, a maintenance worker 2, and a half-time planner. Some of that work is now being done by contract, and we think it's being done more efficiently and more effectively, and that includes the contract for building official, inspection, and code enforcement, the new contract that you just approved for custodial services. And then we did feel that during the recession we had cut back too far in community development, and many of your goals actually fall into the community development area. So the director was created a couple years ago, and we also have a half-time assistant planner. As far as reserves go, during the reconstruction of the inn, the money faucet was turned off, and the reserves were drained to practically nothing. And then during the next 5 years, a lot of effort was spent rebuilding reserves. That was affected somewhat by the recession. But as the recession has abated and money has come in from a variety of sources, we've been able to rebuild the reserves up to about the level they were at before. We still have not quite got to the 50% that is our policy, and so we'll continue to work on building reserves in future years. One of the big issues that we've had is that the state ended redevelopment. And as part of that, they canceled all loans between cities and the agencies that they formed. And we had loaned substantial amounts of money to our redevelopment agency. There's an ongoing fight over repayment of those loans, but our first repayment actually has been approved, which we'll get next week, and will apply to the first part of 2014-15. A portion of that, a fairly significant portion of that, has to go to low and moderate income housing, and the rest can go to the general fund. And we've put an asterisk there by the general fund source saying we should hold that in reserve pending decisions on administrative funding. And that's because we're able right now to charge $250,000 of our administrative costs to the successor agency, but the State Department of Finance is starting to challenge that. The Oversight Board has actually supported it. So I think there's a question in the future as to whether we will continue to receive $250,000 a year for administration of the successor agency, or whether that'll be pared down over time. So these are the repayments. That's sort of a minimum schedule. We're still fighting for about twice that much.
Can I have a question on that? You notice on the last year, go back a slide.
I'm trying.
Okay.
There we go.
You see, 1920, it's 70,000 in the housing general fund, and then we dropped in 2021 to 15,000. Wow.
That's the final payment. That's
the
because
last payment,
that's
okay.
because the current ruling by the Department of Finance is that we're only entitled to $2.2 million in repayment over this schedule. We think that it should be 5.2, and we're trying to find out right now whether there are other cities who have the same problem that might be willing to engage the state in a fight over that. But at this point, this is what it looks like.
I just wanted to mention, I cannot thank Councilman Blatz enough for being on our oversight committee. I mean, the amount that the state was leaving us had to be shared by the city, the school. I mean, it was a battle for crumbs. And believe me, our Councilman Blatz represented us very well, because everybody was in the same miserable boat. So I can't express our appreciation for that committee. I'm surprised there was no felonies committed to that, or it got close.
Thank you.
And I'd also like to thank the other members. Under Paul's leadership, the Oversight Board has actually been very supportive of us. And our main battle has been with the Department of Finance. And we've had one successful appeal of a Department of Finance action, and we've gone down in flames a couple times too. So it's a work in progress. So I did mention that we need to look ahead, and we do have some challenges going forward, one of which is retirement rates. And PERS has changed their actuarial assumptions to cover investment losses that occurred during the recession, to deal with the fact that we're all living longer, and so they have to pay us more retirement as a result. And because their assumption on the rate of return in the stock market has been dropped down and is still dropping down. So there's going to be a ramping up of PERS rates over the next 5 years, and then a leveling off at a higher level, which will pinch our budget. We have done a number of things, but those things tend to affect the longer term, not the medium term. So new employees have a less rich retirement formula. As far as retiree medical goes, new employees take longer to get vested and have a lesser benefit when they get vested. But the need to deal with those employees that are already hired, whose benefits are still in place but maybe have not retired yet, is still there. So we see this as being something that in the medium term is going to be a bit of a challenge. And then the successor agency administration that I mentioned earlier is another challenge. So this budget's a little bit tight, but we're pretty able to balance it. But I think it could become more challenging as we go forward, especially if the rate of growth of TOT levels off a little bit. So the big picture is that tourism remains strong, and that's our mother's milk. Staffing is sufficient to complete the council's major initiatives. We're spending $1.5 million a year on infrastructure. Reserves are building up, and there's a long-term concern about benefit costs and the redevelopment wind down.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I would be curious, perhaps Susie could give us some data on this. I know our hotels and motels tend to run at 100% or 90% occupancy during the weekend. I don't know what our rate is of occupancy during the week, because we only have so many rooms. If the occupancy, let's say, averages 65 or 70%, could you predict if we move that occupancy up to 90%, what the difference in TOT would be? Because at some point we would reach our maximum.
We don't actually have that data because TOT is reported monthly, so we
Uh-huh.
just get a lump sum for the month, and we don't get an occupancy per day.
Would that be difficult for our hoteliers to say what their occupancy rate was on Sunday night through Thursday?
We could talk to the Visitors Bureau and see if through them there's something that could be done to generate some data.
Yeah, I would like to see that, because I think, to me, if TOT increases, it means we have to have greater occupancy.
Yeah,
And my
that's-
understanding is that we're full on weekends, so it has to be during the week.
Yeah, the Visitors Bureau discussions are very focused on that issue.
Good, good. Well, anybody else be interested in seeing that? Okay.
So now we're flipping over to the budget books, if you brought them, and going through the administrative departments and also the police department. So the first budget to look at is the city council budget, which is on page 96 through 98. So generally speaking, this budget is the same as it has been in past years, but I did want to point out a couple of items. First of all, there's a line towards the bottom on page 96 called Community Outreach that has a $5,500 amount in it. And you did receive letters from the 211 program and also from the Visitors Bureau asking that their contributions be continued this year, and those contributions are within that amount. So there's no need to add any money to the budget if you desire to continue funding those two items. Also, on the next page, I'm sorry.
Excuse me, Madam Mayor. On the community outreach, you said the Visitors Center? What did they
The
receive?
Welcome Center, in the past
Oh,
few
the-
years, you've been giving $500 a year to the Welcome Center for
Right.
printing materials and items such as that.
Right, and they're asking for 500.
Again, yeah, both groups asked for continuation of their current contributions. If you flip to the next page, we do have $10,000 budgeted for community visioning. When we discuss that later this evening, I'm recommending that that be increased to $20,000. And we can have that discussion when that comes up on the regular council agenda, but I don't think 10,000 is going to be sufficient. And then we have a $50,000 contingency for cultural services, and we do have a request from the museum for 50,000 operating assistance again. That is in the process of being analyzed, and I'll bring that analysis back to you at the June 10th meeting and also give the museum an opportunity to present their case. But to the extent that the museum doesn't need the full 50,000, that could free up some more money for the Arts Commission requests or other things that come through the budget. So we also have a continuation of the 5-year commitment of $50,000 per year to the Visitors Bureau for the outreach that they're doing to promote the community. So unless there are any questions, I don't have anything further on the city council budget.
Mr. Clark, would you give me a little more information on the cultural services contingency?
We knew that the museum was going to be requesting $50,000 and that you'd be getting requests from other community groups for funding, including our commissions. And so we were able to find enough flexibility in the budget to put a $50,000 contingency there so you have some money that could be allocated to those uses. And it's not a fixed amount. You don't have to allocate the whole thing, or you could decide that you want to fund more, and we'd have to find other ways to come up with that money.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Councilmember Clapp?
I have a question. How much money did the Visitors Bureau receive this year from the TOT?
I don't have the number right off the top of my head.
You know,
Maybe
Scott?
Mr. Eicher knows.
I believe in the last calendar year, in 2013, we hit very close to 250,000.
250,000. And how much does the city donate a year?
50.
50. And is part of our agreement with the Visitors Bureau to have an accounting from you at this point? Are you completely independent? How does that work? I've forgotten.
I give a financial statement to the city on each quarter, quarterly statements.
With an itemization of everything as well?
Correct.
And are we going to have that as part in our packet?
We certainly could.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks.
Councilmember Laura?
Madam Mayor, yes, in regards to the Ojai Museum, I saw that the roof needs to be fixed. Does Greg have any idea of the damage so far, or that needs to be repaired? Because you said the 50,000, you don't know how much they're going to request, so.
Right. This 50,000 has to do with their operating needs,
Oh.
not with the roof repair. And we've budgeted money separately in the capital improvement fund for the roof repair based on the best estimate that we can come up with.
Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith?
I'm a member of the museum, and I support it wholeheartedly. They've had 2 fundraiser things going on, which I hopefully would get a ticket for, and both times I sent in my RSVP too late. So they were sold out. So I think they are doing a fantastic job in fundraising and getting the word out there. I don't know how that would reflect on the 50,000 that we're giving them for operating expenses. But I presume we get a budget look at theirs, what, twice a year, or what?
I have a 3-year history that I put together last year, and they've provided me the information to add a 4th year to that. So,
Oh, good.
And I'll bring that forward on the regular agenda.
Excellent.
On June 10th.
Yeah, because they are doing a bang-up job on fundraising now and interesting people.
Madam Mayor, I have another question for Mr. Clark.
Okay.
It may be Scott, too. So we have the Visitors Center open in the museum, and we give them $500 a year. Is the Visitors Bureau open on the weekends? No. Is there any sort of communication going on with the Visitors Bureau and the Visitors Center as far as helping fund them because they're filling a need that's being created by the Visitors Bureau's outward marketing?
The terms of the Ojai Tourism Improvement District does not allow us to do that. Our funds can be used only for outbound destination marketing, according to the way it's organized. The city can do what it wants with its fair share in terms of increasing or decreasing it, but the assessment is to be used only in a certain
For the
manner.
marketing. Okay, thanks.
And before we go on, since we've been talking about the museum, I'd like to relate, I believe it was last Thursday. Time flies. At any rate, the Ojai Museum entertained 40 ambassadors from the Toledo, Ohio Museum, Libby Museum there. This is actually the first time the ambassadors travel all around the United States. They're a great group. But this is the first time they have visited Ojai. And we had just completed all of our renovation and all of this. And the museum was fortunate to have a well-known designer help set up the way things are encountered and displayed. So what I'm getting at is one, the museum is doing a wonderful job bringing people to Ojai. And 2, if you haven't gone in since they've done the renovations and the changes, it's just amazing. Before you walked in and had kind of a closed-in feeling. You walk in now and it's just totally open. It's really amazing. So I just wanted to comment on that.
Madam
Anyone
Mayor.
else?
Yeah, and we're talking about the museum. Is it possible to get the amount that they're requesting for operating expenses?
They requested $50,000, and I asked them for a breakdown of that, similar to what we did last year, and so that's what I'll be providing on June 10th. It'll be a comparison between their results for prior years and the results for 2013.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, and I think the Ojai Museum is doing a fantastic job, and definitely would love to support them.
Okay, if we're done with that budget, the next one is the City Treasurer's Department on page 99. And it's a fairly small budget, just covering the stipend for the city treasurer and a few other minor items.
Oh, city treasurer. What are we going to do when Alan's no more? He's been the treasurer for how long now?
Yeah. So the next budget on pages 100 and 101 are the City Attorney's Department, and I'll turn the microphone over to Mr. Fletcher to make a couple comments.
2 main points I'd like to make is, as you know, with the change in my contract to a monthly retainer, the proposed budget is $105,600. The other thing I'd like to point out is that what we don't budget for now is any sort of outside litigation expenses. So if there's any litigation the city is sued and is not covered by our insurance pool, or if the city seeks to file an action, for any reason whatsoever, whether something my firm does or whether we hire outside counsel, that would be something that would be budgeted outside. We don't carry a budget inside for those expenses. But otherwise, the retainer we have here covers basically all regular services, attendance at all meetings, preparation of all ordinances, resolutions, research, communication with staff, and all code enforcement cases, all code enforcement appearances except when a case gets set for trial. And then we would separately invoice for the trial preparation and trial, which in a year and a half we've not had a trial yet. So, but if it does come along, that is separately invoiced.
Any questions from council? Mr. Clark?
Okay, the next budget is the city manager's budget, which is on pages 103 through 105. And that primarily contains the personnel costs associated with the city manager's office. That's been reduced somewhat because of Mr. McCleary being partially charged to the recreation department. So that's actually gone down a little bit over the years. There are two things I'd like to point out. First of all, there's a payroll contingency, which is on page 103. And that's money that we've set aside for the council to consider raises for city employees. And we do have a closed session this evening to discuss employee relations. And so that would be the time to discuss what you want to do in that area. Secondly, on page 104 near the top, there's $100,000 that says partial OPEB pre-funding. OPEB is a term that stands for other post-employment benefits. And we have a very substantial unfunded liability for employee medical. It's actually above $5 million. I forget the exact number right now. It's really gone up. Yeah. So the recommended best practice is to fully pre-fund that, which would be totally impossible. But we have enough of a projected surplus in the current year, 13-14, because the revenues went up faster than we thought, that we could set some money aside to begin pre-funding it. And so that's put there for that discussion.
I have a quick question, thank you. ICMA, are there any employees, members of ICMA, or is that just your dues?
The city's a member of ICMA.
Oh, so the
it's all
city is a
incorporated
member.
into one.
Okay, it's all appropriated,
lump, yeah.
okay.
Any other questions from council? Councilmember Laura?
Yes, Madam Mayor. How much, do you know the difference or the numbers for Steve McCleary salary? The difference, where is his other part going? Is going to Park and Recreation?
Right. So when we
How
eliminated
much
the
more?
recreation director position, we assigned Mr. Clary to be the director of that department. And I believe it's 30% of his cost is charged to recreation. Do you recall, Susie? So we'll have to get you the exact number then. Mr. McCleary says it's 25. Okay, if there are no further questions, the next budget is the Finance Department, which is on pages 107 through 110, and Susie will present that.
Good evening, Council. The proposed Finance Department budget for 14-15 is based on 3.75 full-time equivalent positions. And if you would turn to page 106 instead of 107, there is a chart there. As city manager mentioned earlier, that we have accountant retired last June, and we did not, we feel that position. And the savings from that change was used to help change the part-time community development department director to full-time position. And the reorganization of a city finance department staffing level has been come a long ways. When I first came, the city department had 6 full-time position and 2 part-timers. In total, it's a 7 full-time equivalent position. At the time, some of the accounting functions were handled by manually, which took a longer time to process the job than using automated computer system. The accounting computer system at the time was antiquated, and when I inquired about updating the software owners were saying they would not do that because they didn't have any research and development department. So to improve the situation, in November 2006, staff request and council approved, set aside $133,000 to purchase better software to improve our work efficiency. And in August 2009, we purchased Springbrook software with 9 different modules that is integrated with a GL system. And this conversion helped enormously increasing our efficiency. Currently, all the modules, 7 out of 9 are implemented, and except for building permits and inspection module, and we return one of the work order management module. And this building permit and inspection module should be implemented as soon as possible. It took a long time to reorganize finance department staffing level to current level, which represents almost 50% reduction from the beginning. And current staff level is really bare minimum, that it can only have, with this level, we will have a reasonable internal control in place. And the total revenue, 14-15 operating budget for this department is estimated to be $781,619. If you will turn the page 110, the finance department total shows $1,134,823. We need to subtract $353,204. That is the total of transfer out to Fund 31 for capital projects, and Fund 50 and Fund 51, and that will give us a net of $781,619 for finance department budget. There are no unusual increase or decrease in my department budget other than a personnel cost. And if there's any questions, I'll be glad to help answer questions.
Any questions from council members? Mr. Clark?
Okay. The next budget to go through, and we're probably at the last one we can do at this workshop right now, is the city clerk's budget.
Oh, that's a very expensive.
My department is very small. In 2011, you guys approved a scanning system, and to date, I've scanned over 15,000 documents and put a kiosk in the lobby for the community to look up records on their own. And at the next council meeting, we'll be going over the website updates that we hope to propose and get approved. But basically, my budget's staying the same as it was for last year, except with the addition of the election this year, which is about $20,000.
May I make a
Mayor
comment?
Pro Tem
I
Smith?
believe on the ballot, there's one of the measures is another state unfunded mandate where we're supposed to allow everybody access to records, which we are very good at doing. We need to basically eat the cost of copying, and the state will not pay us back.
That's right.
I mean, I read it twice, because am I reading another unfunded mandate from the state? I'm afraid so.
Any other questions, comments? Hey, Mr. Clark?
So I think we've run out of time for this evening, so we'll pick up where we left off with the police department next time.
Okay, then I'm going to adjourn the special meeting.